Welcome back for episode 97 of Count Me In. I am A's podcast about all things affecting the accounting and finance world. I'm your host, Adam Larson, and I'm happy to bring you our latest episode on the work environment and personal development. Ellie Amdur, career and executive coach, journalist, and keynote speaker, joined my co-host Mitch to talk about recent business decisions, what they've meant to those in the workforce, and what individuals can do to best prepare themselves for the future. I'm sure you will enjoy this conversation, so let's go listen now.
What is your perspective on the current business environment, and how would you rate businesses in their response to the COVID-19 pandemic?
Mitch, good question. First, let me say thanks for inviting me here. I'm happy to be with you and your membership. Current business environment, for sure, it's unlike any we've ever experienced. It's being influenced by as many serious conditions as has ever existed together at one time: an economic meltdown, massive job losses, COVID-19, social and racial and gender unrest. We're experiencing as much as we've ever experienced before. What I'm afraid of is knee-jerk reactions on the parts of employers, entire industries, even government agencies. But it's natural, but it's something that I think is way overboard. For instance, the thing about working remote. Well, we didn't have a choice on that. We understand that. And having technology that permits us to do it is a pretty awesome thing. But companies already having said that we're going to work remote until 2022, they're getting out of lease deals, they're selling office space. I think they're making decisions that one day soon they're going to be kind of sorry they've made as suddenly and as, I should say, thoughtlessly as they have made them. I don't think enough thought has gone into it.
Well, what are the potential outcomes of these decisions? You know, it's something you're afraid of. It might be a little thoughtlessness, but, you know, as far as businesses and their sustainability, longevity, why might these decisions may not be the best ones for the business?
That's a great question. And I think it's because we're reacting to things we can see immediately. We're not holding off on our decisions. You know, I'm very fond of saying, and I've said this for many years, going way, way back to my corporate leadership roles, that if we thought about the consequences of our decisions before we made them, we would make better decisions. So, yeah, COVID hits, and we got to get everybody out of each other's ways. Otherwise, the transmission of the disease will be increasing, which it is now anyway, as you know. But the things we can't see are things that have now become a little clearer to a lot of people, both workers and leaders and decision makers in organizations. And that is that we're missing the interpersonal connections that we so very much we rely on and enjoy during our work days and our careers. We are social creatures. We rely on belonging to groups. In human history, those groups have taken all kinds of shapes, like a corporate division, a religion, a fan club, a community. We need that. It is one of the most basic of all human needs. Abraham Maslow pointed that out to us very well. Once we get done with our physiological needs for food, clothing, and shelter and things like that, and our longer-term security needs, the most basic need of all is belongingness. We're missing that. People are lonely. They don't like being alone. They want to be part of a team where somebody slaps somebody on the back or shakes hands or nods approvingly in a conference room. And the lack of those things tend to decrease the effectiveness and the efficiency of performance. But not enough companies are realizing that yet. They're still enamored of their technology and their ability to work remotely.
Now, obviously, there are circumstances that are preventing businesses from reopening and people being able to gather in the manner that you're discussing. There are going to obviously be those who have their concerns going forward long term. So, what can businesses do? How can businesses accommodate the needs of the human being, of their employees, keeping in mind their safety most importantly, but also being able to offer this human interaction and this gathering so that they may be able to feel slightly more accomplished and achieve all the benefits that you previously mentioned?
Well, let me answer that two ways. In the very, very short term, nothing. We've got to continue doing what we're doing because we don't have a way to prevent this disease and we don't have a way to treat this disease. And with the spikes that are going on, predominantly in the United States more than any other country, now we're headed into the third wave and wintertime. It's serious business. We're going to have to sacrifice something, and that's our belongingness, our togetherness, our interaction. So in the short term, until there is a vaccine that is safe, effective, and plentiful, because we don't know if it's going to be a one-time or if you have to do a second booster. We don't know any of that yet. Until that time, there's just very little we can do other than continue to reach out remotely as much as we possibly can. But going longer term, and I can't tell you exactly what that longer term is. Is it going to be 6 months from now? Is it going to be 8 months? Don't know. But I can tell you that there are indications that companies have already realized this. Recent news has shown that in the world of big tech, and I refer to the big four, which is Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Microsoft, have taken up new leases on a couple of million square feet of office space in Manhattan. So they apparently have given this some thought. And Facebook is a company that early on in this epidemic or the pandemic said that that their employees could work remote until 2021 or 2022. Yet they're buying up office space. I think they know what's going on. Maybe they're getting good deals because of the situation. But they're going to be calling employees back into work. And I think they understand the thing about the consequences of their decisions. And so I think what companies can do is to let their employees know, and their vendors and their customers as well. We're not running away. We're not going to be a 1-800-don't-bother-me.com type of business, but that they are indeed intending to get back to working closely together and to strengthen the interpersonal bonds. If I were to advise corporations, and not just big tech, but all corporations, that's exactly where I would go.
Now, how about logistically more specific to our audience, right? We work for accounting and finance professionals at large. You know, their role was already changing prior to this pandemic. And then you add the remote aspect to everything. You know, their jobs have shifted. What can you recommend as far as, you know, accounting and finance professionals, accounting and finance organizations to, you know, best, again, accommodate these needs while maintaining the safety of their employees?
Well, a couple of ways to answer that, and I'll try as hard as I can. First of all, much of the work that an accounting and finance professional does can be done remotely. We know that. But if you're working for a firm, whether it's a small bookkeeping firm or a very large accounting firm, you still need that interaction. And I think what the companies, the employers can be doing in advance is to plan for what that's going to look like when we do get back together again, and let their employees know in a very transparent way what they have to look forward to. One of the characteristics that I'm seeing when I talk to employers, when I talk to employees, when I talk to people who have been furloughed or laid off or just completely dumped out on the street, or people who are working productively, is that there's an atmosphere of being forlorn. Employers need to be able to assure their employees that this is not the way it's going to continue to be. But while we're doing what we have to do, let's just do what we have to do. I think that's a clear message, and I think that there are very few people who wouldn't get that message. Because if we're all in this together, we feel better about it, and sooner or later we'll get back. Look, on my career coaching, when I wear my career coaching hat, I can tell you that since April 6th, when this thing really took hold, I've had 34 clients of mine who either during COVID or just before COVID, or before COVID really gripped us, landed jobs. Now, that tells me something interesting. It tells me that employers, when they realize they need someone to fill a job, whether they can do it in person or not, they're going to fill that job. So the element of despair needs to be combated with an element of optimism, saying that if my company needs me to do this, if I have to do it alone in my office at home or my basement or whatever, it's just not going to be a forever thing. I think the morale issue is something that employers have got to strengthen and let everybody know that the minute we can get back, we will.
Now let's take a step back and talk a little bit about the skills, right? Whenever it is that we return to the office, the environment's going to be different. There are going to be changes, but as you said, much of the job that we're doing right now can be remotely, can be automated. So as far as accounting and finance professionals, moving forward through this pandemic into the future, what are some of the skills or qualifications that you would recommend, our listeners really focus on to best prepare themselves for that new norm?
I'm going to answer that question two ways. I want to talk about skills, but I want to also talk about where those skills are going to be applied. So you're right. A lot of what an accounting and finance professional does can be automated, but we have been through plenty of historic currents and waves in which automation was feared as something that would take away everybody's job, and it did just the opposite. The most recent of which, of course, was when the PC showed up in 1981, the IBM 5150, if you remember that. It wasn't the first PC, but it was the first successfully marketed PC. Everybody was running around like Chicken Little saying the sky was going to fall and the PCs and computers were going to take away all our jobs. Well, here it is 40 years later, and PCs have created 40 million jobs. What they did was they didn't eliminate jobs, they shifted them. They moved them over. And automation or technology does that. Robotics is what everybody's afraid of today. But by the same token that a robot using ultraviolet light can clean a room to within 99.99% of infectious bacteria and other germs, and take away the need for somebody to come in and swab that room down, for a 350-bed hospital to be able to do that, they're going to need 100 to 150 of those robots. Well, who's going to build them? Who's going to program them? Who's going to sell them? Who's going to train everybody on them? Who's going to maintain them? And who in the accounting profession is going to recognize the companies that are making those products and say, that's where I'm going? So that's the second part of my answer. If you give some thought and do a lot of research to where jobs are going to develop, so let's say in artificial intelligence or algorithm development or quantum computing, I'm trying to pick the very high-tech jobs. An accountant or a finance professional may say, well, I'm not a quantum computing scientist, but the companies that are doing that are going to need the same kind of services that I'm providing, let's say, to a waste management company or to a sports promotion company or whatever. And so the question then becomes not only what skills do I need, which are skills that are much more soft than hard, decision-making, interpersonal skills, creative thinking, problem solving. But they're also who's going to need them. And then you start getting into these very attractive lists like clean energy companies, garbage as energy, energy storage, companies dealing with quantum computing, nanotechnology, smart homes, urban planning, ocean literacy, things like that. The question is, and for the job seeker, the job seeker has to do this for herself or himself. Where are those future jobs? I mean, I can get into that conversation with you, Mitch, but you and I don't have that kind of time today. So the question is, or the answer rather is, you're going to need to develop your soft skills more prominently now than the hard skills that you've already proven that you have. And then you're going to have to say, who's going to be paying me to bring those skills to the workforce?
It's a really good point. And, I think the next step here is, okay, so as far as my personal development, much of my skills, technical skills probably will not change. We certainly need to upskill in the soft skills, as you said, potentially a little bit of reskilling. But as far as personal development and moving forward, what should our listeners really do on their own? What should the employers and the various organizations be doing right now, whether it's virtually or planning for the future? How do we really get these employees ready for this change, for this transformation, and be able to adapt to these new work environments and these new roles that could be coming?
Rich, every time you ask me a question, I say to myself, that's the best question he's asked, and that you've done it again. From the employee's point of view, there has to be a commitment to ongoing professional development. You cannot sit on what you've got. Now, for the really skilled, high-level accounting person or finance person, that means taking those courses, workshops, professional development webinars and seminars that will teach you skills, if you don't already have them, in planning and management. Because if you want to sit and do accounting work all day long, day after day after day, you're going to be automated out of there. But if you learn those things that are necessary to help lead businesses into the next year and the next decade and the next generation, you're going to be doing that. You're going to be taking courses that may not have anything to do with your hard skills. What's it like to do business with the European Union, for argument's sake, which is our largest trading partner? What are the cultural differences? What are the social necessities needed to do that kind of business? So what the individual has to do is make a commitment to ongoing professional development. I have clients who have been smart enough, and I wish I could say it was my idea, but it was theirs, but I'll tell you what it is, who budget their annual household, that build into their annual household budget courses at their local community college. Now, community colleges are treasure troves, and we all know that. To take courses in accounting, finance, computer science, urban planning, allied health, etc. They are all over the place. Every community, every county has one. They're inexpensive, they're available, they're frequent. But many of my clients that I'm talking to now are committing a certain part of their annual budget to learning. Now, once you commit to it and you put money to it, it's going to happen. And you're going to stay up to snuff. Now, how much better do you think your resume looks when under continuing professional education, it shows that you are in progress of taking this course? Maybe it's a Six Sigma course. Maybe it's a lean manufacturing course. Maybe it's a course that teaches you about the industry you're in, not the occupation that you hold. Now, I think there has to be a commitment on the part of employers and higher education to work together for the employers to tell community colleges or colleges and universities, look, this is what we see we're going to be needing over the next 10 to 20 years as far as workforce development. How can you and we work together how can we tell you what we want you to build, and how can you go about building it? And there'll be a wonderful relationship between the university or the community college and the employer. This is going on around the country, by the way. Technical colleges are doing that very, very well. I also think the government has to get involved. The sad fact is that state government's subsidies of public colleges are down in all 50 states. And I think that it's going to come with government support to build those curricula that will help the businesses and the institutions of higher learning attract the employee who is committed to doing the professional development. So you have a four-way partnership here: the individual, the corporation, the institution of higher learning, and the government, to whatever extent it is capable of doing that. It's a big answer I just gave, but it's the answer to a very good question you asked.
Well, I certainly appreciate that, and all the backstory there. I think it certainly paints a good picture for what the question was intended to answer. So, we started this conversation talking about the current business environment, and we transitioned to the future of work, and now we've kind of got into some career development. So, to wrap things up, I'd just like to give you an opportunity to share your insights or your perspective on anything else that you would like to share about career development, personal development, the future of work, and what our listeners might be interested in knowing as they prepare to take the next step in their own careers.
Well, okay, so you just asked me to talk to you for about 2 hours, Mitch.
We'll try and keep it short as the last question.
As far as career development is concerned, there are employers that do a good job of supporting that, but the employee has got to accept this as his or her responsibility. No one is going to do it for you. Will you get help? Will you get support? Will you get reinforcement? Yes, but no one is going to do it for you. Couple more points: that while jobs are changing, they're not going away. You've got to look at where the jobs are going to be. And I mentioned before lots of areas like nanotechnology or smart homes or vertical farming or things like that. You can do what you do now for a company that may not be growing into the future, for a company that is doing exactly that. So we're in more than ever before a job shift economy. I recently wrote a column that was entitled "Everything I Ever Learned About the Job Market, ... And the completion of that was, I learned during a recession. Because good times make poor teachers. But when things get tough, our learning mechanisms and our survival mechanisms engage. What I've learned is this: that we are facing a new world. The job market is going to be different from now. None of us knows exactly what it'll look like a year and 3 years and 5 years from now, but it will be different. And for those who are saying, well, I'm 62, I'm 64 years old, I don't need to know about that. Oh, yes, you do, because it's happening that fast. And if you're going to be in the job market for 3 years or more, you had better understand that. Second point is, you better be ready for anything, because if anything can happen, it will. Whoever thought that Ford Motor Company, the company that basically started the auto industry, would stop making sedans? And they have. Unthinkable. If that can happen, anything can happen. Another thing is that being ready, by boning up on your skills, understanding where the workplace is going, readiness will become more important than expertise, but you still need to be an expert at something. You got to get really, really good at something, but you got to get ready for anything.
This has been Count Me In, IMA's podcast, providing you with the latest perspectives of thought leaders from the accounting and finance profession. If you like what you heard and you'd like to be counted in for more relevant accounting and finance education, visit IMA's website at www.imanet.org.